The morning was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of stillness that makes you feel something's about to go wrong. I was sipping coffee in my backyard, admiring my new project, a simple wooden shed I'd built over the weekend. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small place to store tools and maybe set up a workbench. Then came the knock. Sharp. Angry. The kind that echoes through your bones. When I opened the door, there she was. Karen, my neighbor with a clipboard in one hand and a camera in the other. She had that familiar look. Righteous fury mixed with smug satisfaction. "Good morning," she began in that overly sweet tone. "I couldn't help but notice you've built something unauthorized." I tried to stay calm. "It's just a shed, Karen, for tools." She smiled, the kind of smile that says I'm about to ruin your day. "Well, the HOA will decide that?" By evening, I got the notice. Violation of community code, unapproved structure. A fine, a threat to remove it. Karen had actually filed a report, complete with pictures, timestamps, and even a note saying my shed ruined the visual harmony of the neighborhood. For a moment, I considered tearing it down, but something inside me snapped. Not in anger, but in resolve. If Karen wanted to make this a problem, I'd make it the biggest problem she'd ever seen. That night, I called in a few favors. My cousin was a contractor, my best friend an architect. We spent hours sketching, laughing, planning. "You want to turn this into what?" my friend asked. "A mansion," I said, grinning. "Right where the shed stands." At first, they thought I was joking, but the more we talked, the crazier and more possible it sounded. A modular build that could be assembled in days, right under Karen's nose. The next morning, she stood by her window with binoculars as the first truck arrived. Her jaw dropped when she saw the crew unloading steel beams instead of wood planks. She marched over immediately. "What is this?" "You're making it worse!" I smiled, pretending innocence. Just making a few improvements. If only she knew what was coming. Because by the time the sun would rise the next day, my little shed would start turning into something she'd never forget. Something that would make the entire neighborhood question their HOA rules forever. The moment Karen stormed back to her house, muttering about calling the HOA again, I pulled the crew aside. I could already feel the eyes of the neighborhood watching us. Curtains twitching. Phones recording. The shed's rebellion had officially begun. That night, while everyone else slept, we worked under the pale glow of portable floodlights. My architect friend, Malik, unrolled a massive blueprint across the hood of his truck. "You're serious about this?" he asked, voice half amazed, half terrified. "Dead serious," I said, tapping the paper. "Karen wanted a fight. Let's give her a show." What started as a basic shed, expansion quickly turned into something outrageous. A hybrid modular mansion with fold-out panels, steel framing, and a self-leveling foundation that could be assembled in less than 48 hours. It was experimental. Something Malik had designed for off-grid builds. "It's going to look like it rose out of the ground overnight," he said, grinning. Exactly what I wanted. By midnight, the first sections were already in place. The structure began to grow, quietly, stealthily. Each panel locked into the next with magnetic clamps. The sound was faint, but to someone like Karen it must have been thunder. At 2 a.m., I saw her porch light flick on. Curtains shifted. A shadow appeared in her window. Binoculars again. "Think she's watching?" Malik chuckled. "She's recording every second," I replied. "Let her." By dawn, half the structure stood tall, sleek, modern, and definitely not a shed. Karen's car screeched to a stop outside. My property line as she stumbled out in her robe, phone in hand. "This is a violation of at least 5 HOA regulations," she screamed. I waved politely. "Morning, Karen." "Like the new shed?" Her face turned crimson. "That's not a shed, that's a house. I'm calling the HOA president right now." I shrugged. "You do that. I already submitted new paperwork. It's a home improvement project, fully permitted." Of course, that was a half-truth. The paperwork was in progress. But by the time anyone figured that out, the mansion would already be standing. That day, she followed the construction crew like a hawk, taking photos, arguing, even trying to block the driveway. But we just kept building. Each hour, the structure evolved, walls rising, glass panels gleaming in the sunlight, the skeleton of something far grander than a shed taking shape. And by sunset, the neighborhood stood still. My shed had grown taller than Karen's house. She stared at it, slack-jawed. For the first time, I saw something new in her eyes. Not anger, but fear. Because she realized, whatever I was building, it was far beyond her control. By sunrise, word had spread faster than wildfire. Every neighbor who once ignored my little shed now stood at the edge of their lawns, coffee mugs in hand, whispering like it was the most dramatic event of the year. Karen, of course, was at the center of it all, pacing, ranting, and pointing at my now 2-story shed, like she'd discovered a criminal operation. At 9 a.m. sharp, I got the email. Urgent HOA emergency meeting, mandatory attendance. I couldn't help but laugh. They'd never held an emergency meeting before. Not even when the Smith's dog bit the mailman. When I arrived at the clubhouse, Karen was already there, seated front and center with a stack of printed photos, ready for battle. The HOA board, 5 people in matching polo shirts, looked tense. "Let's get straight to the point," said the HOA president, Mr. Dalton, rubbing his temples. "We've received multiple complaints regarding your recent construction." "Mr. Hayes." Karen shot up from her chair like a rocket. "Complaints? Try violations!" "That thing isn't a shed. It's an eyesore. It's destroying our neighborhood's image," the room murmured. I calmly placed my tablet on the table and slid it toward Dalton. "Actually, it's a pre-approved modular extension. See? Filed under property enhancement." Dalton scrolled, eyebrows furrowed. It's pending review." Karen slammed her hand on the table. "Pending review means not approved. He's building a mansion illegally." I leaned back, smiling. I didn't know building something nice was illegal. Besides, it's temporary. Just a test project. Her jaw dropped. "A temporary mansion?" "Exactly." The room erupted in half-stifled laughs. Even Dalton tried not to smirk. Karen turned scarlet. Then she hissed, "You'll regret this. I'll get the city inspector involved." "Please do," I replied. "He's coming tomorrow." I invited him. That shut her up for a second. When the meeting adjourned, I walked out feeling 10 feet taller. The board couldn't stop me yet, and Karen knew it. She followed me outside, her voice shaking with fury. "You think you're clever," she spat. "You're mocking the HOA." "No," I said, turning to face her. "I'm improving the neighborhood. You should thank me." She glared at me like she wanted to set the whole structure on fire. "You'll see. That thing won't stand a week." But as she stomped off, I looked back at my property. The metallic frame glinting under the sun. Workers already adding the upper-level balcony. And I thought, oh, it'll stand, Karen. And it's going to stand taller than your pride ever will. The next morning began with the low rumble of an unfamiliar car engine outside my driveway. A white city vehicle rolled up, emblazoned with the bold letters, Building Inspection Department. Karen was already there, of course. Standing by the curb like she'd been waiting all night. She looked like she'd just won the lottery, clutching a stack of papers and waving excitedly at the inspector as he stepped out. "Mr. Hayes," he said, adjusting his cap and clipboard, "we've received a complaint about an unpermitted construction project." Karen couldn't resist jumping in. "It's not a project, it's a palace. Built without approval, right under our noses." I smiled politely. "Morning, Inspector. Glad you could make it. Come on in, I'll show you everything." Karen followed close behind, recording on her phone like she was filming an exposé. The inspector's boots crunched on gravel as we walked toward the towering structure. From the outside, it looked surreal. Sleek glass walls reflecting sunlight, brushed steel beams gleaming. You'd never guess it started as a garden shed. I opened the front door, revealing the nearly completed interior. The inspector paused, visibly impressed. "This is exceptionally well built." "Thank you," I said. "It's a modular prototype. Everything here is prefabricated. No permanent foundation yet," Karen scoffed. "Prefabricated or not, it's illegal. He's breaking multiple HOA rules." The inspector raised a hand. "Ma'am, HOA regulations are separate from city code. My concern is structural and zoning compliance." Her face fell. But he can't just..." He cut her off. "Actually, he can, as long as it's within temporary structure guidelines. And from what I see, it qualifies." The silence that followed was golden. I bit back a grin as the inspector continued walking around, jotting notes. "Everything looks safe and up to standard." "You've done your research, Mr. Hayes." Karen sputtered, her voice cracking. "You mean, it's legal?" The inspector nodded. "Completely legal. Innovative, even. I might want to feature this in our municipal design report." Karen looked like she might faint. As he left, he shook my hand and said, "You're ahead of your time. Keep it up." I watched him drive away while Karen stood frozen, clutching her phone, eyes wide with disbelief. Finally, she hissed, "This isn't over. I'll take this to the state level if I have to." I chuckled softly. "You do that, Karen. But by the time they get here, this shed will be something no one can tear down." That night, as I turned on the lights inside the now half-finished mansion, the glass panels shimmered like stars, and somewhere across the street, Karen's curtains snapped shut in pure defeat. 2 days later, I woke up to something I never expected: a swarm of people at the end of my driveway, cameras, boom mics, a van with Channel 9 local news written on the side. And of course, there was Karen, perfectly dressed, sunglasses on, smiling like she was about to become famous. "This is the man," she told the reporter, proudly pointing toward me. "He's building a mansion without HOA consent. We're just trying to protect our community." The reporter, a woman named Tessa, turned to me. Sir, can you tell us what's really happening here? I set my coffee mug down and smiled. Sure, it's pretty simple actually. I started with a shed, got reported, and decided to innovate instead of argue. The camera light blinked red. So this structure is what exactly? A modular smart home prototype, I said, keeping my tone calm. Fully sustainable, eco-friendly, and compliant with city code. We're testing a rapid deploy housing system, one that can transform small structures into livable spaces overnight. Tessa raised an eyebrow. Overnight? I grinned. Pretty much. With the right team and the right motivation. Karen folded her arms, scowling. He's lying. There's no way this was approved. He's tricking the system. Tessa looked intrigued. Would you like to show us your permits, Mr. Hayes? Of course. I handed her the paperwork. Malik had finalized that morning, stamped and verified. The timing couldn't have been better. The camera zoomed in as she read. It seems everything checks out. Wow. So this project is actually legal. Karen's jaw dropped. You can't be serious! It ruins the aesthetic. The reporter turned back to her. But it's not illegal, ma'am. You could practically hear her ego deflating. Within hours, the clip hit the evening news. Local man turns HOA dispute into groundbreaking smart home project. By sunset, people were stopping by to take selfies with the house. Someone even called it the miracle shed. That night, my phone buzzed nonstop. Investors, curious engineers, and even a housing startup wanting to collaborate. Karen, meanwhile, had gone silent. Her curtains stayed shut all evening, and for once, her driveway was empty. But I knew her. She wasn't the type to give up. No. Karen was plotting her next move, and she'd make it personal this time, and I was ready for it. Because if she wanted a war, she was about to find out. I was building something far stronger than walls. I was building a legacy. The next few days were surprisingly quiet. Too quiet. No shouting, no complaints, no new HOA notices taped to my door. For a moment, I almost thought Karen had given up. Almost. Then, one evening as I was locking up the construction site, I noticed her porch light flicker. 3 times. It seemed random, but then I saw shadows moving in her living room. Cars parked quietly along the curb. Strange. Curiosity got the better of me. I turned off my own lights and watched from the upstairs window. One by one, familiar faces appeared at her door. Neighbors, all carrying folders, papers, and that same concerned citizen expression. A secret HOA meeting. I grabbed my phone and zoomed in through my window camera. Inside, Karen stood at the center, pointing toward a printed photo of my mansion, taped to her wall like a wanted poster. Her voice carried even through the glass. We need to unite, she said dramatically. He's making a mockery of everything we've built here. If the HOA won't act, then we will. Someone hesitated. But the inspector said it's legal. Karen slammed her hand on the table. I don't care! We can still use community influence. We can call zoning, utilities, environmental control. Something will stick. He can't stay untouchable forever. So that was her plan. A full-blown crusade. I hit record on my phone, capturing everything. Let her dig her own hole. Later that night, as the cars began to leave, I spotted her pulling someone aside. Mr. Dalton? The HOA president himself. She handed him an envelope. He hesitated, glanced around, then tucked it into his jacket. That's when I realized Karen wasn't just being petty. She was bribing her way to victory. The next morning, a bright orange notice appeared on my front gate. Stop work order. Pending review. Of course. Karen was standing across the street, sipping coffee like she'd just conquered Rome. Oh no, she said sweetly. Looks like the city's changing its mind. I smiled back. You might want to watch the news tonight. Her smirk faltered just a little. By noon, I uploaded the video. I'd recorded, titled HOA Karen's Secret Meeting Exposed. Within hours, it exploded online. Thousands of views. Comments flooded in. This guy's a legend. That woman's insane. Shed mansion for the win. By sunset, Karen's name wasn't just whispered in the neighborhood. It was trending. And though she tried to deny everything, that envelope she'd handed Dalton, it was about to become the biggest scandal our HOA had ever seen. By the next morning, the entire neighborhood was in chaos. My video exposing Karen's secret meeting had gone viral overnight. Over 500,000 views and counting. Neighbors who once avoided me were suddenly waving, grinning, even bringing snacks for the construction crew. Some called me the shed guy. Others called me the man who beat the HOA. Either way, I was suddenly a local hero. Karen, on the other hand, couldn't step outside without hearing whispers. I saw her storm toward the HOA clubhouse around noon, practically dragging poor Mr. Dalton by the arm. Reporters had already started showing up at the gates. Inside, voices were raised. I didn't even need to eavesdrop. They were yelling so loud the walls might as well have been glass. You've destroyed the board's credibility, Dalton barked. The whole town thinks we're corrupt. Karen snapped back. You took the envelope. Don't act innocent now. The shouting escalated until someone slammed a door. Within the hour, the HOA's official page went down. Rumors spread that half the board had resigned. A few hours later, my phone buzzed. A news headline notification. Local HOA under investigation for misconduct. Homeowners viral video sparks inquiry. I leaned back in my chair, laughing. Karen had thrown the first stone, and now the entire wall was crumbling on her. But I knew her too well. She wouldn't stop there. She wasn't the type to accept defeat quietly. At sunset, she appeared at the end of my driveway again. Phone in one hand, fury in the other. "This is all your fault!" she screamed. "You humiliated me!" "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I set down my tools and met her gaze. "You reported my shed, Karen. I built something better. You tried to destroy it, and you destroyed yourself instead." Her face twisted in rage. "You think you've won? This isn't over. I still have connections. You'll regret this, I promise you." I sighed, walking back toward the mansion in progress. "You keep saying that, but all I see is a woman who's running out of moves." As I closed the gate, she shouted one last thing. "You'll never get your final inspection approved. Never!" That made me pause, because for the first time, her threat wasn't empty. She might actually be planning something big, something that could put the entire project at risk. And when I saw her making a late-night phone call near her porch, whispering to someone in a black SUV, I realized the next phase of this war had just begun. That night I couldn't shake the image of Karen whispering to that mysterious man in the black SUV. It wasn't one of her usual neighborhood gossip sessions. This was different, quiet, urgent, dangerous. By morning, the SUV was gone, but something felt off. When I stepped outside, I noticed the construction site looked slightly disturbed. A few tools misplaced, some cables unplugged. My workers swore they hadn't touched anything. Then I found it, a small envelope taped to the gate. No name, no address. Just one line written in sharp black ink. "You're playing with fire. Stop now." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Karen was capable of pettiness, sure, but threats. This was new territory. I showed the note to Malik, who frowned. She's getting desperate. But that SUV, maybe it wasn't just HOA nonsense. Could be someone from the zoning office, or worse. Worse? I asked. He shrugged. Someone she paid off. Someone who doesn't care about paperwork. That day, we doubled down on security. I installed cameras around the property, motion lights, and a backup generator. If Karen thought intimidation would stop me, she clearly didn't know who she was dealing with. By noon, the crew was back at work. The final pieces were coming together. Rooftop panels, smart glass windows, and the wraparound balcony that gave the mansion its signature look. Neighbors watched in awe as the once humble shed now stood tall, shimmering like something out of a luxury magazine. But just as we began celebrating, a black SUV rolled up again, this time right up to the gate. A man in a dark suit stepped out, flashing a badge. "Mr. Hayes," he asked, "we're here to perform an emergency safety review." Karen appeared seconds later, feigning surprise. "Oh my goodness! The city sent someone again? What a coincidence." "Yeah, right." The man's tone was polite but cold. "We've had a report of unauthorized electrical work. If we find violations, you'll need to shut down construction immediately." I nodded slowly. "Of course, go ahead. Everything's documented." Karen stood behind him, smirking. She clearly expected chaos. But when he checked the schematics and permits, Malik had pre-filed. His expression changed. "Everything's in order," he said finally. "Actually, very advanced work." Karen's jaw dropped. "That can't be right. Check again." He turned to her. "Ma'am, unless you're the homeowner or a certified contractor, please step back." She stormed off, humiliated once again. But as the SUV pulled away, the man gave me a subtle look, something that didn't feel like relief. It was a warning, and when I checked the security footage that night, I realized he'd left something behind in the yard. A small blinking device. The moment I spotted the faint blinking light under the deck, my stomach dropped. It wasn't big, just a small black box tucked between two support beams, flashing once every few seconds. I crouched down carefully, heart pounding. It didn't look like a standard construction sensor or tool. This thing was wired, and active. Malik was still at the site, reviewing blueprints when I called him over. "You see that?" I whispered. He knelt beside me, squinting. "That's not ours," he muttered. "Could be a tracker. Or worse, an audio device. Why would anyone plant that here?" He looked toward Karen's house, where she stood on her porch pretending to water her plants, except the hose wasn't even on. We both knew the answer. I grabbed a pair of gloves, carefully detached the device, and carried it inside. Malik examined it under the kitchen light. "This is professional grade," he said. "It's transmitting. Look." He pointed to a small antenna and a power LED. It's sending data somewhere. Let me guess, I said. To the black SUV. He nodded grimly. She's not just being nosy anymore. She's spying. I felt anger rise in my chest. Not the petty kind, but the cold, calculating kind. She'd crossed a line. So, I decided to cross one too. That night, I set up my own hidden cameras, 5 of them, pointed straight toward Karen's property. Every entrance, every fence line, every movement recorded. If she wanted to play spy games, I was ready to play chess. The next day, I paid a visit to the local tech shop. The owner owed me a favor, and by the evening, I had a signal scanner, one that could trace where that little device had been transmitting. When I turned it on, the scanner beeped steadily, leading me down the block. It stopped exactly where I suspected, Karen's house. I stared at the signal display, transmission confirmed. She'd been recording my site, maybe even my conversations, and sending them to someone, but who? That night I confronted her. I walked right up to her driveway, holding the device in my hand. Lose something? I asked. Her face went pale. What is that? You tell me, I said. It was under my deck. For a moment she said nothing, then forced a laugh. You're paranoid. Probably something your workers dropped. Funny, I replied, since it's registered to your Wi-Fi. Her fake smile vanished. You can't prove that. Oh, I already did. She froze, the mask slipping completely. And that's when I saw it in her eyes. Not just anger, fear. Because now, she knew the tables had turned. The look on Karen's face that night said everything. She wasn't expecting me to fight back with proof. And she definitely wasn't expecting me to show up with evidence tied directly to her Wi-Fi. I walked away without another word, but inside I was boiling. If she'd been spying on me, there was no telling what else she'd done. So I called Malik. She bugged your property? He asked, disbelief in his voice. Worse, I said. She's transmitting data somewhere. I want to know what she's collecting. By morning, Malik arrived with his laptop and a stack of cables. We hooked the device to a portable power unit and began extracting the data. The screen filled with lines of code, timestamps, and encrypted file names. Malik frowned. It's video. Dozens of clips. From my site? He nodded. Looks like it. She's been streaming it live. Whoever's on the other end was watching everything. We clicked on the first file. The footage showed me and my crew working. Karen lurking nearby, zooming in from her porch. Then, another clip. This one was from a completely different angle. It wasn't from the bug. It was from inside her house. I blinked. Wait, that's her living room. Malik grinned. Guess she didn't realize the feed loops both ways. Her setup mirrored her own devices. Classic amateur spy mistake. So not only did I have proof she'd been spying on me, I also had footage of her coordinating it. We downloaded everything, encrypted it, and saved it on a backup drive. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it yet, but something told me I'd need it soon. By noon, another HOA notice appeared on my mailbox. This time, signed by a new interim president. Mr. Dalton had stepped down, and the board was temporarily restructured. The letter warned that my property would undergo a final compliance inspection. I could practically smell Karen's perfume on the paper. She was still pulling strings behind the scenes. But this time I had leverage. I printed one of the screenshots. Karen on her phone. Headset on, monitoring my site's camera feed. Then I slipped it into an envelope with a note. Karen, keep pushing, and this goes to the police. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I watched her retrieve the envelope from her mailbox. Her confident stride faltered when she saw the photo inside. Her head whipped up toward my house, eyes darting. I smiled from my porch, raising my coffee cup in a silent toast. For the first time in weeks, she didn't yell, didn't threaten. She just turned and went back inside. But deep down, I knew the silence wasn't peace. It was preparation. For the first time in weeks, the neighborhood felt tense. The gossip had gone quiet. The HOA group chat, once buzzing with Karen's daily tirades, was silent. Even the kids who rode bikes past my driveway stopped doing laps near my house. It felt like the calm before a storm. And I was right. 3 days later, the sky turned gray as if matching the mood. Rain rolled in, washing the dust from my construction site, and revealing something I hadn't noticed before. Footprints, deep, fresh, and leading straight to the side door of my mansion. Someone had been here in the night. I checked the security footage immediately. The cameras had been disabled. All of them. The feed cut out at exactly 2:13 a.m. and didn't come back on until nearly sunrise. Whoever it was knew what they were doing. I called Malik right away. Someone's been inside, I said. He sighed. You think it's her? I know it's her, I replied. But she's smarter now. She's not leaving any fingerprints this time. He was silent for a moment. Then it's time to go public again. I hesitated. I didn't want to start another viral storm. But if Karen had broken into my property. It wasn't just an HOA feud anymore. That evening, I set up a live stream. The title, Caught in the Act, the HOA War Isn't Over. Within minutes, hundreds of people tuned in. I walked viewers through the construction, the threats, the planted device, and finally, the missing footage. Someone doesn't want this house finished, I said. But they made one mistake. I've got backup systems. I tapped a few keys on my laptop, and the backup hard drive synced. Unlike the main cameras, one hidden sensor in the garage had kept recording. The chat exploded when the video played. A figure in a raincoat crept across the yard, stopping near the electrical control box. Even through the shadows, the outline was unmistakable. The posture, the hair, the way she held her phone like a weapon. Karen. The audience went wild. Comments poured in. She's finished. That's breaking and entering! Expose her. Karen must have been watching too, because 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a single text from an unknown number. Delete it, now. I smiled. Not this time, Karen. By the time the live stream ended, the clip had already been shared thousands of times. The police would see it soon, and so would every homeowner in the subdivision. The next move was no longer mine. It was hers, and judging by the headlights that appeared outside my gate, later that night, she'd already made it. The rain had turned into a steady downpour, drumming against the mansion's unfinished roof like a heartbeat. The headlights outside my gate cut through the darkness, two beams, unmoving. Then a car door slammed. I stepped out onto the porch, raincoat half-zipped, phone in hand. The camera was already recording. Karen stood by the gate, umbrella in one hand, her phone glowing in the other. Her usual confidence was gone, replaced by something sharper. Desperation. You had no right to post that video, she shouted over the rain. You had no right to break into my property, I replied evenly. You want to talk about rights? Let's start there. Her eyes darted around, as if expecting someone to back her up. But the street was empty. Just the hum of rain and distant thunder. You don't understand what you've done, she hissed. You've humiliated me. My husband's job is on the line because of that footage. I crossed my arms. Maybe he should. Ask why you were sneaking into someone else's property at 2 a.m. She froze, eyes flashing. You think this is just about you? You're tearing this neighborhood apart. Everyone's mocking me. My house is vandalized. I've lost friends, all because of your stupid shed. I stepped closer, the rain pouring between us like a curtain. You started this, Karen. You reported me over a shed. You spied, lied, bribed, and broke into my home. And now you're blaming me for your consequences? For a second, she said nothing. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. You don't get it. This isn't about me anymore. You've made enemies you don't even see. I frowned. What does that mean? She looked over her shoulder. The headlights flickered again. The same black SUV. Two men sat inside, watching. I tried to warn you, she muttered. But it's too late now. Warn me? I asked, but she was already backing away. Karen, what's going on? Who are they? She didn't answer. She just whispered, You'll find out soon, then climbed into the SUV and slammed the door. The vehicle idled for a few seconds, then slowly rolled away, its taillights fading into the storm. I stood there, drenched, trying to process what just happened. This wasn't about HOA rules anymore. This was something else, something bigger. When I went back inside, I found Malik waiting, eyes wide after seeing the live stream replay. You okay? He asked. I nodded slowly. No, but I think we just found out this story isn't over yet. He frowned. Then what do we do? I looked out the window, toward the empty street. We finish the house, I said, and we find out who's really behind all this. The next morning, the storm had passed, but the tension hadn't. The air felt heavy, like the neighborhood itself was holding its breath. Malik and I reviewed the footage again and again. The black SUV, the two men, Karen's cryptic warning. None of it made sense. She said it's not about her anymore, Malik muttered. So who's pulling the strings? I rubbed my forehead, thinking. Who benefits from stopping this build? Not the HOA. They're already under investigation. Maybe someone outside the neighborhood. Then I remembered something, an offhand comment from the city inspector weeks ago. He said something about a municipal report. Innovative design, remember? What if someone higher up saw that footage? Malik's eyes widened. You think they're trying to buy you out? Or shut me down before I make it big? We spent the rest of the morning combing through emails, city records, and permit requests. And there it was, a corporate entity listed under Urban Revitalization, Partners LLC. They had recently filed a proposal to purchase and redevelop several residential zones, including ours. And one of the signatures on the paperwork? Karen's husband. I sat back in shock. No wonder she was so obsessed. This was never just about HOA rules, it was about profit. Malik leaned closer. They wanted to get you fined. force you to demolish the shed, and then buy the property cheap. You exposed her, and now you've ruined their plan. It all made sense now. The threats, the spying, the mysterious men. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps. Every car passing by made my pulse quicken. At 1 a.m., I went out onto the balcony watching the street. Karen's house was dark. But then, just as I turned to go back inside, I saw movement near the fence. 2 figures. I grabbed my flashlight and pointed it, but they were gone. The next morning, Malik called in a favor from a friend in city planning. By noon, we had confirmation. Urban revitalization. Partners had been under quiet investigation for using illegal tactics to push homeowners off their land. And Karen's name was listed as one of their community liaisons. I stared at the document, anger burning through me. So she wasn't just being nosy. She was working for them. Malik nodded grimly. And now that you've exposed her, they'll come after you next. I looked out at my mansion, gleaming in the sunlight like a fortress. Let them come, I said quietly. This time I'm ready. But deep down, I knew. The next move wouldn't be about rules or permits. It would be about survival. For the next few days, I operated like a man preparing for war. Malik helped me set up new security systems, motion sensors, hidden cameras, and remote alerts. Every inch of the mansion was monitored now. If they wanted to come after me, they'd have to do it in the open. Karen's house, meanwhile, stayed eerily silent. Curtains drawn, no cars coming or going. Even her plants on the porch were dying. It was like the life had drained right out of her property. But I knew better. She was regrouping. On the 4th day, an official envelope arrived in my mailbox, sealed with the HOA logo. Inside was a final notice. Cease all construction and vacate premises pending investigation. A joke. The HOA had no authority left after what happened. But this wasn't their style. It was a message. A warning. Malik looked at the paper and said, "They're baiting you." I smirked. Good. Let's give them what they want. That night, I drafted a letter back. A polite, professional response stating I would fully cooperate and would be available for a site visit by the HOA at 10 a.m. the next day. Then, I sent it through official channels, knowing Karen and her husband would see it. And I set the trap. We installed small cameras all around the main hall, disguised as decorative vents. The live feed was linked directly to a secure cloud account and my live stream software. When the clock hit 9:55 a.m., Malik and I were ready. At exactly 10:03, a black SUV pulled up. Karen stepped out first, sunglasses hiding her face. Behind her were 2 men in suits, the same ones from that rainy night. Her husband wasn't there. I opened the door with a calm smile. Right on time. Karen's voice was tight. We're here to perform a site compliance check. Of course, I said. Come in. They entered cautiously, scanning the room. One of the men whispered something into a small earpiece. Beautiful house, Karen muttered, her tone dripping with resentment. Hard to believe this used to be a shed. Oh, I made sure to keep all the records, I replied. Transparency is important, don't you think? She glared at me. You think this is a game? I leaned closer. No, Karen, I think this is evidence. She frowned. Evidence of what? I smiled slightly and glanced toward the nearest vent, the hidden camera light blinking faintly red. Everything you're about to say is being recorded. The color drained from her face. The men exchanged looks. One reached for his pocket. But before he could speak, my phone buzzed. A security alert. Someone had just breached the mansion's back gate. The security alert flashed across my phone screen. Unauthorized entry. South gate. Malik froze. They're already inside? I glanced toward the back of the house. They're not here for a visit. This was never a compliance check. It's a setup. Karen's face tightened. What are you talking about? But she knew. I could see it in her eyes. I moved quickly, opening the security feed on my phone. The back gate camera showed 2 more men in black entering the property. One carried a crowbar, the other a black duffel bag. Malik, seal the front door, I ordered. He locked it instantly, sliding the bolt shut. Karen's voice rose. You can't do this! We're authorized personnel. Then explain why your friends are breaking in through the back. I snapped. She hesitated, glancing toward the men in suits who had come with her. One of them subtly shook his head, a silent order for her to stay quiet. I realized then that Karen wasn't leading this anymore. She was trapped too. The feed flickered again. The 2 intruders were now moving toward the main hall. One pulled out a small cylindrical device and attached it to the breaker box. The power cut out instantly, plunging us into darkness. Malik cursed under his breath. They're cutting the lights! I switched to battery backup. The emergency lights flickered on, dim but enough to see. Karen stepped back, trembling. You don't understand. They said they'd handle it quietly. I didn't think they'd... Her words cut off as the first loud crash came from the back hallway. Footsteps echoed on marble. Malik grabbed the nearest tool, a steel pipe, and stood beside me. I hit the emergency lockdown button on my phone. Every automatic door sealed shut except the one leading to the front porch. Then I made my move. I opened the live feed app again, the one I'd used during the previous stream, and hit Go Live. "Hello everyone," I said, my voice calm despite the adrenaline pumping through me. "If you're watching this, I need witnesses. I've been invaded." Thousands of notifications exploded on screen within seconds. The audience poured in, the comments racing up the side. The men burst into the room, eyes widening when they saw the red recording light. "Too late," I said. "Smile for the internet." One of them lunged forward, grabbing at the camera, but Malik swung the pipe, knocking it from his hand. The crowd watching online erupted in chaos. Karen screamed, "Stop! Stop this now!" But the world was already watching, and there was no stopping it anymore. The mansion's great hall had turned into a battlefield. Rain lashed against the windows. The emergency lights flickered red, and the camera feed caught everything. Karen screaming, Malik blocking the doorway, and the two intruders trying to cover their faces. The live viewer count shot past 50,000 in under a minute. "Call the police!" I shouted to Malik. "I already did," he yelled back. "They're on their way." One of the suited men realized the gravity of the situation. He hissed into his earpiece, "Abort! Abort now!" But his partner wasn't listening. He lunged toward me again, trying to grab the phone I was holding. The camera caught his face perfectly as I sidestepped. "You're on live broadcast," I warned. "The whole country's watching you." The chat was exploding. "What's happening?" "They're attacking him." "That's Karen." "Oh my God. Call 911 now." Karen looked like she was on the verge of breaking down. She clutched her head, pacing back and forth. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she shouted. "They promised no one would get hurt." I turned the camera toward her. "Then who are they, Karen? Who sent them?" She froze, then whispered, "My husband's company. They wanted to erase everything. The mansion, the footage, all of it." Her words were barely audible over the chaos, but the live stream picked it up clearly. The comments went insane. That's when the front door burst open. "Police." They swarmed in, lights flashing, voices booming. "Drop it, hands where we can see them." The intruders didn't even argue. They were on the ground within seconds, wrists bound. The suits, the weapons, the duffel, all confiscated. Karen stood paralyzed in the middle of the room, mascara running down her face. "I didn't want this," she said softly. I didn't know how far they go." I kept the camera steady. "Then maybe it's time the world saw the truth." The officers looked at me, then at my phone. One of them nodded slowly. "Keep that footage safe. It's going to be evidence." By the time the police led the intruders away, the live stream had surpassed 2 million views. News outlets were already clipping the footage. The world had just witnessed the climax of the HOA war. As the flashing lights faded from my driveway, Malik turned to me and exhaled. "You realize you just exposed an entire operation on camera, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, and now it's only a matter of time before their bosses come knocking." He frowned. "You think this goes higher?" I looked out at the mansion, now glowing eerily in the aftermath of chaos. "Oh, Malik," I said quietly, "this was just the middle act." By sunrise, my quiet suburban street looked like a media circus. News vans lined the curbs, reporters swarmed outside the gates, and drones hovered overhead for aerial shots of the HOA mansion showdown. The video had gone viral overnight, 18 million views in 12 hours. Hashtags like Karen Gate, Mansion War, and Show Heist were trending worldwide. But behind the fame came the fallout. The police had confirmed the men were hired security contractors, tied to Urban Revitalization Partners LLC, the same corporation Karen's husband worked for. The company had gone dark, shutting down its website and social media accounts by morning. And Karen? She was nowhere to be found. Malik handed me a cup of coffee as we watched the chaos unfold on TV. "They're calling you a hero," he said. "The guy who exposed HOA corruption live on air." I smirked faintly. "Yeah, but heroes don't usually get emails like this." I turned my laptop around. On the screen was a message from an anonymous address. "You should have stopped when we told you. This isn't over." Attached was a single photo. A close-up shot of my mansion's front gate, taken just an hour ago. Malik's face darkened. "They're watching you again." "Let them," I said quietly. "I'm done hiding." Still, I couldn't shake the unease. The mansion, once a symbol of victory, now felt like a spotlight. Beautiful. Yes, but exposed from every angle. Later that day, a detective stopped by. Officer Reyes, the same one who'd handled the first HOA incident months ago. He stood in the foyer, glancing around in disbelief. "You've built a fortress," he said. "But it's not the house that's got everyone's attention. It's the story." He handed me a folder. Inside were documents, financial statements, contracts, and correspondences between Urban Revitalization partners and multiple city officials. They were planning to turn this entire neighborhood into a commercial development, Reyes said. You blew their cover wide open. I scanned the pages, anger rising. So this was never about a shed. It was about taking our homes. Exactly, he said. And now they're desperate. You humiliated powerful people, and people like that don't go quietly. After he left, Malik turned to me. You're in danger, man. Maybe we should leave for a while. I looked around at the mansion, my once simple shed that had turned into a symbol of defiance. No, I said firmly. If I run now, they win. We'll fight this the same way we started, in the open. But as night fell again, the mansion's security lights flickered on their own, one by one, and my phone buzzed with a new notification. Camera 4, motion detected, attic. The notification repeated, motion detected, attic. Malik looked up from the couch, his face draining of color. You sure that's not a glitch? I shook my head, staring at the screen. That sensor runs on a separate system. It's motion-activated and battery-powered. It can't be hacked remotely. The feed flickered to life. Grainy night. Vision footage from the attic's corner camera. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness and dust swirling through the beam of light. Then, movement. A figure. Faint, crouched, shifting behind a stack of old boxes. Malik whispered, Is that a person? I zoomed in. The shape was unmistakable. Someone was in my attic. I grabbed a flashlight and a wrench, motioning for Malik to follow. Stay close and stay quiet. The staircase creaked as we climbed, every step amplifying the tension. The rain outside had stopped, leaving a silence so sharp it made the hairs on my arms rise. At the top of the stairs, the attic door was slightly ajar. The sensor light blinked red, still active. I pushed it open. The flashlight cut through the dark, landing on scattered insulation and old furniture. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then, a sudden rustle from the far corner. I swung the beam. A face appeared, pale, wide-eyed. Karen? I breathed. She raised her hands immediately. Don't call the cops, please! Malik nearly dropped the flashlight. You've got to be kidding me. She was trembling, soaked, and her clothes were torn as if she'd been running through the woods. I had nowhere else to go, she said, voice cracking. They turned on me. I stared, half in disbelief, half in anger. You broke into my house again. Tears welled in her eyes. Listen to me, please. You don't know what they're capable of. My husband vanished last night. The company wiped everything. Our accounts, our phones. They're cleaning house. Malik frowned. You expect us to believe that? Karen stepped closer, shaking. They'll come for you next. The live stream humiliated them. They need to make an example. I lowered the wrench slightly. Then tell me what you know. She took a deep breath. There's someone above all of this. A man named Grayson Vale. He's the real head of Urban Revitalization Partners. My husband was just a pawn. I exchanged a glance with Malik. Where is he now? I asked. Karen's lips quivered. He's here. He's been watching you. From inside your own system. The lights in the attic flickered, and my phone vibrated in my pocket. New notification. Admin access detected. Security override active. Someone had just taken control of my mansion. The phone screen glowed red. Security override. Admin access granted. Malik grabbed my shoulder. They're inside your network, man. Shut it down! I can't, I said, frantically swiping through the control panel. Every camera feed was flickering, static, distortion, and then black. One by one, the icons went offline. Karen backed away, panicking. It's him. I told you, it's Grayson! He's got full control. How? I demanded. This system isn't even connected to the grid. Her voice shook. He built the infrastructure for the HOA years ago. Every security terminal, every smart lock, every meter box. They all run through his servers. He's been watching this neighborhood for months. Before I could respond, the mansion's intercom crackled to life. Then a voice. Deep, calm, confident. You've made quite the mess, haven't you? Malik's eyes widened. Who the hell? You should have stayed quiet, Mr. Walker. The voice continued. We had a plan. You exposed it. You embarrassed me. Now you'll understand what real control looks like. The main lights cut out completely. Emergency backup flickered red across the hallways. Karen screamed. He's locking the doors. I checked the system. Every exit had just sealed. Metal shutters dropped over the windows. My mansion had become a cage. Malik, I said, forcing myself to stay calm. Manual override. The breaker in the basement. He nodded and bolted down the stairs. I turned to Karen. You said he's watching through my own system. How do we block him? She was shaking uncontrollably. We can't, unless you destroy the main console. Everything's routed through the central processor in your office. Perfect, I said, heading for the door. But as soon as I stepped into the hallway, the monitors on the walls lit up, one by one, showing live footage of me and Karen from different angles. Then his voice echoed again. You really thought this was about real estate? No, it was a test. I wanted to see how far someone would go to defend a piece of land. You've proven very entertaining. Karen shouted at the camera. Grayson, please! Leave him out of this! Oh, Karen, the voice replied, almost amused. You've always been expendable. The monitor nearest her flickered, and then exploded, sparks flying. She screamed and fell to the floor. I rushed to her, checking her pulse. Still alive, but barely conscious. The intercom buzzed again. You have 5 minutes before this house resets permanently. Walk away and or burn with it. Smoke started curling from the vents, and deep in the walls, I could hear the low hum of something powering up, a failsafe I hadn't installed. The mansion was humming, a deep electric growl echoing through every wall. The red emergency lights strobed across the halls like warning beacons. Malik's voice came through my earpiece, faint but urgent. The whole system's rigged. He's rerouted your generator. It's gonna overload. I dragged Karen toward the stairs. How long do we have? 2, maybe 3 minutes, Malik shouted. We've got to kill the main power! Sparks showered from the ceiling as I half-carried Karen down the steps. Smoke was already thick, seeping from the vents. Grayson's voice returned over the intercom. Calm, cold, almost gleeful. You should have accepted your place. Mr. Walker, you could have been part of something great, but you made it personal. I shouted back, you tried to steal my home! Home is a privilege, he said. One I can erase. Another explosion rocked the hallway. A junction box blew out near the kitchen. The mansion trembled. Malik met us at the landing, coughing. Main power's in the control room. If we fry the core manually, we can stop the surge. We sprinted through the smoke-filled hall, tripping over scattered tools and debris. Karen, weak but conscious, whispered. He's in the system's root drive. Basement access point. We burst through the office door. The control console was glowing red, temperature rising fast. Warning messages scrolled across every screen. Override locked. Core meltdown imminent. Malik yanked open the breaker panel. We need to cut all connections. But then, Grayson's voice returned. Not through the speakers this time, but through my phone. End this, Walker. Walk away and I'll spare you. Your mansion, your story, your little fame. None of it matters. I looked at Karen, trembling beside me. Then at Malik, who was waiting for my call. No, I said quietly. This time the story ends my way. I ripped the panel wires free, crossed them against the main power node, and slammed the emergency fuse shut. The entire mansion screamed, lights flashing, sparks flying. A blinding surge of energy roared through the system, then silence. Everything went dark. Smoke curled in the air. Then, one by one, backup lights flickered on. Weak, but steady. The hum was gone. Malik exhaled shakily. You did it. Karen slumped against the wall, whispering, He's gone. But just as I started to relax, my phone buzzed once more. One message, from an unknown number. You win this round, Mr. Walker, but remember, I build cities, and I never lose twice. I stared at the screen as dawn's first light broke through the smoke-streaked windows. The mansion stood, battered, scorched, but alive. And so was I. This isn't the end, I murmured. It's just the next beginning.